Go ahead.
Hi, welcome to Cut and Uncut. My name is Daphne, and I'm cut.
And I'm Bonnie Violet, and I'm uncut. And here we talk about all things trans.
And then some.
In this episode, we will be recognizing Trans Day of Visibility.
We'd also like to give a big shout out and a warm thank you to our Patreon members, Skylar Bean, Jacob Blankenship, Elizabeth, Danielle Loyal, and Bertha D. Hugs and kisses.
Yes, and be sure to watch us on YouTube, listen and rate us on Spotify, join us on our Patreon, follow us on the TikTok, and get your merch. I got mine.
All right, Bonnie. So you look so pink on Trans Visibility Day. What are you wearing today for this occasion? You look so cute today.
Today. Most days I don't, right?
I
just tried I just tried to do everything pink, blue, and white like I did I changed quite a few of our little overlays. So it's pink, blue, and white. I got my pink, blue, and white earrings, my pink ring, my blue, got to pull out all the stops. How about you?
Rest to the max. Today, I'm wearing some gifted pink water pearl dangles earrings, my pink and white Guess shirt, and some Ruby Roo lipstick. But I always wear that.
Nice. That looks great. I'm like, if folks are like, what is she doing? I feel a little distracted because we're going live on Instagram now. So I'm like on two different screens and change. I don't do well with change.
Focus. So today we're talking about Trans Visibility Day. And I just want to bring it back for a minute, Bonnie, where, on one of our episodes, my sister joined us and she spoke about how our community has so many letters in our community and everybody wants to be recognized. I know this is about Trans Visibility Day, but I just wanted to start out and give a quick education on the terms LGBTQS. No, I'm sorry. It's LGBTQIP2SA.
All right.
Do you know all about that, Bonnie?
I do. I think I can get all those.
Okay. So some of the terms, and I got this off of the Loyola University of Maryland. So if you have any questions, that's where I got it. The first one we want to talk about is ally. Bonnie, to you, what is an ally?
Ally. Sorry, I keep hearing that.
You lie? Why you lying?
Ally.
I lie all the time.
Hi, my name is Christian, and this is anyway. An ally is the idea. The ally is somebody who supports the LGBTQ plus community, and not just like, oh, I have a gay friend, or I have even a bunch of queer friends, but in the sense of that you actually like participate in, like you vote in a way that supports LGBTQ folks. You maybe march in parades. You donate or contribute to LGBTQ, support or mutual aid, those sorts of things. So it's more of like an action rather than just being, the friend, but actually really being an ally.
That's an amazing answer. So according to Loyola, Bonnie, it says a person who supports and respects sexual diversity acts accordingly to challenge homophobic and heterosexist remarks and behavior and is willing to explore and understand these forms of bias within themselves.
Yep, exactly what I said.
That's exactly what you said. You won't
word for word.
Verbatim, sister. Okay,
Yeah.
And then the next one is asexual. Do you know what that one is too? Or do you want to put it in your words?
So an asexual, and I think the thing that's important to understand about some of these as we get into like sexuality and gender identity is that like it all kind of comes down to our understanding of what those things mean to us. And then also just like heterosexuals, it's not like all straight people have the same type of sex and the same type of sexual behaviors and they look the same and act the same. You know what I mean? Like there's a variety of expressions of being heterosexual, just like there are for these as well. So asexual typically is somebody who's not necessarily attracted in a sex, like sex isn't a big part of their desire or draw to being with a partner. It's really more about the emotional kind of intimate connection versus physical sex.
Okay, and put that in a sentence, Bonnie.
Like, I mean, I think that the long and short of it is like an asexual person is typically somebody that is not really into physical sex when it comes to being in an intimate relationship.
Okay, that's great. According to Loyola, asexual is a person who generally does not experience sexual attraction or very little to any group of people, may still have romantic, emotional, affectionate, or relational attractions towards others.
Again, so, exactly what I said.
I'm trying to tell you, girl, you can teach this class. Hey, this one you may know. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. Binary gender.
Yeah, so binary gender is just the idea of being male or man or woman, and that's it. And to be a man, you're masculine, you're not feminine, you wear pants, like you do manly things. Whereas, and again, there's a spectrum to that understanding of that. But basically, the idea is there is either a man or a woman, and you are either a man or a woman. And as a man or a woman, you act accordingly.
Okay. Is that your final answer, Bonnie?
That is my final answer.
Okay. Well, according to Loyola, binary gender is a sociological construct or traditional view of gender limited to man and woman, defined by a collection of characteristics that are culturally associated with maleness, which is masculinity, or femaleness, which is femininity.
Again, yeah.
Girl, you can't.
I have the layman's version.
All right, well, I'm gonna get, this is a hard one. I don't think you know this. Binary sex.
Binary sex.
Yes.
It's going to be the same thing, except for it's about your, like, what people would refer to as biological sex. So what you were assigned as at birth as male or female. And that's the only option. Even though we know there's intersex and
you jumping the gun, Bunny.
I know, but
okay. So according to Loyola, binary sex is a sociological construct or traditional view of sex limited to male and female. So you are on point again.
Yeah.
All right. So what's biological sex, Bonnie?
I'm like, that's probably annoying. The banner's still going. So biological sex, typically when people use that term, it's the idea, usually it's like either you're a man, meaning you were born with a penis, or you are a female, meaning you were born with a vagina. And it's very much like that's kind of it.
Okay. Well, Loyola says that biological sex is when you have sex with the dictionary. No, I'm just kidding. No, biological sex is the physical anatomy and gendered hormones one is born with, generally described as male, female, or intersex.
Yay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
All right. Now, this one, a lot of people may know. Give me what biological sex is.
We just
did that one. Okay. Bisexual.
Well, bisexual is
you buy me something, I'll be sexual.
Right. So typically, in kind of speaking in a more binary idea, but bisexual means you are a man who has sex with both a man and a woman, or vice versa, a woman who has sex again with a man or a woman. But then bisexuality can also mean that, like, somebody like us who is transgender or non-binary, the fact of whoever we have sex with in some ways makes us bisexual because we're different gendered. Like it's a little confusing,
right?
But there are some like trans people that would identify as bisexual just because they're not male or female.
They identify in that
and
role.
They're having sex with.
That correct? Okay? Is that right?
Yes.
So
go ahead. I think it's great if you could read the definition because I think that really helps.
Okay.
Wrap it up.
Right. Bisexual A person who experiences sexual, romantic, and or physical attraction to people of their own biological sex, as well as another biological sex.
Yes.
So how does that relate to trans?
Well, so trans people aren't considered biological sex. So you're either man or woman when we're talking about biological sex.
Okay.
So so we then are counted by our sex at birth, I guess. And if we're attracted to it, again, it's kind of, I think, your understanding of things. But basically, it's the idea that you're attracted to the same sex or gender, as well as someone of the opposite sex or gender.
So to give an example, if I am a male to female transsexual and I identify as female, but I'm sexually attracted to a man, that would be no, or a woman, that would make me bisexual. Or is that wrong?
It would kind of depend. Again, you know, if you saw yourself as a woman, and we're like biological versus whatever, if you saw yourself as a woman and you have sex with another woman, then you would probably identify as a lesbian, even if you were assigned male at birth. However, you may not see it.
But if I also like men as a woman, that would make me bisexual.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Ooh, good one, Bonnie. Biphobia
would be somebody who has basically, you know, a phobia is a fear. Mm-hmm. Basically, being biphobic would mean that you I don't know if sometimes I don't like using the word fear, but it's basically kind of the fear of bisexuals, or mm-hmm. It could be like not the belief that mm-hmm. bisexuals exist. It really could be kind of, people might label something biphobic, mm-hmm. depending again on, but it's in the general term is just a fear of bisexuals.
Loyola says that biphobia is fear of, or hatred of, or discomfort with people who are bisexual.
Right. And I think that's great to bring out the discomfort, because I think a lot of times we're like, I'm not afraid of you, but I also, like, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know, you know what I mean? And, you know, like, and we can have it internalized as well. So we could have our own kind of struggle with our own understanding of being bisexual. So somebody who is bisexual could have internalized biphobia.
Okay. Now this one, I've been hearing a lot of flack about this one, Bonnie. Cisgender.
So cisgender just means that cis means same. So you basically you match the gender that you were assigned at birth. So you were assigned like female at birth and you live your life as a female, or you were assigned male at birth and you live your life as a man. It just means basically you have the same gender. Whereas transgender means that you experience, like, you go to another gender separate from how you were identified at birth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Loyola states cisgender is a term for a person whose gender identity and gender expression generally matches that assigned for their biological sex.
Yes.
Check mark for Bonnie. Okay. So what's a cis man then?
It's just a man a person who is identified as male at birth, who lives and expresses himself and identifies as a man still today.
Okay. Definition is a cis man is a person who identifies as a man, mm-hmm. represents himself as masculine, and is biologically male. All right. And does that apply the same for cis woman?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like cisgender.
Like sister?
Right.
All right. Closeted.
Closeted just means that you aren't open about your LGBTQ-ness. So whether that's something, it's basically something that you hide, in Black community, oftentimes people refer to that as being in the DL or the down low. But basically, it's the idea that you hide your LGBTQ-ness. And some of that could be that you might not even be fully aware of it yet. Mm-hmm. Or it also could be that you do know, but you don't tell everybody. Like maybe family doesn't know, or work doesn't know, or it just means not everybody knows about your, I guess, sexuality or gender, identity.
Okay. And Loyola states that a person who is keeping their LGBTQ sexuality or gender identity hidden from many or any people. At times, being in the closet also means not wanting to admit one's own sexual identity to oneself.
Yes.
Bonnie, did you study this beforehand?
Girl, I've been doing this a long time.
Okay. Let's talk about coming out.
Coming out.
How does this apply to the transgender world? Let's talk about what a trans person would do. Coming out. Can you?
A lot of people, a lot of more progressive people, like coming out is the idea that I'm telling people, like I'm coming out of that closet, right? I'm telling people that I'm gay, lesbian, trans, whatever. But I personally like it better to say like a calling in, like I'm inviting you into this part of my life, instead of like, so that it's kind of about me bringing you into my world versus kind of like, I don't know. I think it just changes the relationship of it. So I like the idea of bringing people in versus coming out.
Pretty powerful, Bonnie. Loyola says that closet, it means a person who is, Loyola says that coming out is the process of revealing your sexuality or gender identity to individuals in your life. This is a lifelong and sometimes daily process. Would you say that that is an accurate assumption of the definition?
Yes. And it's always happening, like, and it like, it's like with new people that you meet, like at work, there's so many different places. We're constantly in some ways coming out. And especially if we sometimes we can kind of pass in the sense of people aren't going to notice that we're gay or notice that we're trans or notice that we're intersex. So I guess that's a nuance, if you will.
And in the trans world, we call that clocking.
Right. That means that
they tell that you are not passing for what you are assuming to be passing for. So that's called, ooh, she got clocked.
Right. Basically, it's like basically people see that you're transgender.
Yes.
It's definitely, I think, it was definitely a lot more used, I think, in the past. Nowadays, I think there was a belief that you could, like the binary idea that either you're identified male at birth and you want to be female, or vice versa. Not this idea that maybe I actually don't want to identify as either male. I just like went boop.
Yeah.
Could you hear me? Or
yeah, I heard when you went like this. So you repeat it just in case somebody didn't.
Yeah. So basically, what was I talking about?
Clocking.
Oh yeah. So, but I was also talking about the idea of transgender, and that is relevant when people think that if you're assigned male and you're a woman now, or woman to male, versus I might not identify as a man or a woman, and that makes me trans, or somewhere on the spectrum between man and woman. And sometimes it's the idea that it's more of like a circle versus, like the polar opposites is man and woman, but actually maybe there's more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes sense. Wait 1 second. My work phone is still going.
All right. We can handle that. We're like getting into all of this. So it'll be interesting. Folks that are watching, have any questions, whether you're watching us live or you are coming across this later, feel free to put your questions in the comments.
Yes, please. So now we're going to talk about fluid or fluidity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that is?
Yeah. So when we're talking about gender fluidity, it's just basically the idea. And again, it can be different, but it's the idea that your gender expression, your understanding of your gender may fluctuate. So one day you might be more masculine, and the next day you might be more feminine. Or it's kind of like the idea that I'm not just masculine always or just feminine always, but that I can kind of be fluid with how I represent myself, whether it's day to day or maybe it's different environments or, you know, those sorts of things. But it's basically the idea that you can kind of go along the gender spectrum.
I just want to add a word to this one. And we already got past that alphabet letter, which is A for androgynous. Mm-hmm. Would you say that androgyny is also a part of the trans community or the LGBT community?
I think it's an idea of gender nonconformity, which could be seen as part of because transgender is kind of like an umbrella spectrum. So it's anything outside of like the binary of the idea of a man and a woman doing things in the way a man and woman do. You know what I mean? In a very, like, again, just very general way. And so an androgynous person could technically fall under a transgender umbrella, most likely wouldn't identify as trans. They may not even identify as gender fluid or even outside of being different from their sex, but other people might perceive them if they meet them in that one moment or that one time, that sort of thing. So.
Okay. So I'm sorry for going outside of the alphabet, but the Loyola definition of fluid or fluidity is generally with another term attached, like gender fluid or fluid sexuality. Fluidity described an identity that is fluctuating, mix the options available.
Yeah, so the idea is sexuality can kind of go that way too, in the sense of who you're having sex with, who you're attracted to. So it's not just about your gender expression.
So that would be gender fluid. Like, I'm gonna go with this person tonight, and it's
have gender fluid
person.
Gender fluid is typically, I mean, it could be gender and sex, or it could be gender or sex. But when you talked about fluid sexuality, it's more about sexuality than gender. And I think that's one thing that a lot of times people who are not familiar with transness, or even just LGBTQ-ness, I think we've talked about it before, how like being gay or being trans is just kind of thought of to be the same thing. However, being gay is sexuality, and being trans is a gender. And so they are different things. So you have gay trans people, or you have bisexual trans people, or you have heterosexual, you know what I mean? So
come on, Dr. Bonnie Violet.
I don't know about doctor, but I am a reverend. So
yes, Reverend. Please. Okay. All right. FTM/MTS, which means female to male and male to female. What is that?
It's just basically a way to identify being transgender, in kind of the binary sense of somebody who was assigned male at birth, M, T for two, F for female, who now lives as a female, or somebody who was assigned female at birth who now lives as a man.
Does that, and I want to make sure it's not in here before I say it. It's not in here. So does that the term that used to translate as she-male, that everybody hates? It's such a wicked, is that like a slanderous word for trans, she-male?
Yeah, nowadays they might not use that term. Most
but
people, like, we might use that within our own community, but it's definitely not something that people outside of our community would want to refer to as it's definitely thought of being more of a derogatory term or a slur to some degree. And so like even RuPaul doesn't say she-male. She used to say you got she-male, as in like male. And so they went ahead and she was playing with that idea of she-male, because, you know, a lot of the times we try to take back those words that have been harmful for us, but then, you know, but then we've come to see things differently. And so she doesn't even use that term no longer either.
That's being culturally aware, huh?
Yeah, I think it's just being a little bit.
We're educating people to be culturally aware of these things, huh?
I think we're just coming to understand things a little bit more and have words for for things that have always been in existence. We're just, I think, calling it out a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
Getting more specific, I think.
All right. Well, Loyola describes FTM, MTF, or male to male, or male to female, as a person who has undergone medical treatments to change their biological sex. So that's kind of the.
I think that's a great distinction that I didn't speak directly to. Yeah.
And I didn't, and I had to turn the page when you said that. Female to male or male to, oftentimes to align with their gender identity. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the sex reassignment. Did I read that right? Treatments, medical treatment. Yeah.
Indeed. I'm hoping we're not, everything's frozen up on my end. So
yeah, you froze.
So go ahead and just keep talking if you can. I'm not sure why it's doing that.
All right. And you can hear me though, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then what does gay mean?
Go ahead and can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Well, being gay is just typically it's thought to be just a man who is attracted to a man. But it also could be a woman who's attracted to a woman. But it typically is meant to be men who are attracted to men.
Looks like you're coming back, Bonnie, or you're trying to come back.
Am I? It's weird. I'm going to close out the Instagram.
Okay.
And maybe that's what's doing it.
Okay. So Loyola states gay as being a term used to describe a man who is emotionally, romantically, sexually, or affectionately attracted to other men. At times, gay is used to refer to all people, regardless of sex, who have their primary sexual and or romantic attractions to people of the same sex. So that's not what gay used to mean back in the day. Used to be gay used to mean happy. Maybe.
Well, way back in the day.
Reaching.
But yeah, that's another way of using that term.
Okay. And what's gender expression?
So gender expression is just how you present yourself. So it's like the clothes that you wear, maybe the mannerisms that you use, maybe some of the language choice, that sort of thing. So your expression, I almost kind of feel like is like your essence. It's what you put out in
owning your own style.
Exactly. Yeah. But kind of, yeah. And it just kind of speaks more to like gender versus just like punk or
fashion,
goth or that sort of thing. But it's more about this is an expression of my femininity or my masculinity or my manhood or my womanhood or my gender fluid or whatever, you know?
So Loyola states that gender expression is the external display of gender through a combination of dress, demeanor, social behavior, and other factors, generally measured on a scale of masculinity and femininity. All right. So what's gender identity?
Are you moving on your end?
I'm still
frozen too.
No.
Oh, you're moving. Okay, well that's fine.
Moving.
Yeah, so gender, but I'm not moving, right?
No, you're still dark.
Okay, and you're I'm black?
No, I'm black. You just can't be seen on the screen.
Girl. You are funny.
You're spiraling again, so you might be trying to do something. Nope, not yet, Bonnie.
It's weird. It's like my whole system is like locked up, which is weird because I don't want to end the stream. We might have to end the stream and go.
Okay, well, we can. You want to just do this last one?
Yeah, gender we can do the last
identity. Huh?
Yeah. So gender identity is just how you identify your gender. Do you identify as male, female, non-binary, gender fluid, transgender, trans? There's polygender, there's trigender, but basically it's, all of that and probably a little more.
Yeah. And then some.
And then some, right?
Yeah. So we're only up to G, and there's so many more to go through. But unfortunately, we're having technical difficulty. So
But
what do you want to?
what we'll do, since we're about halfway through the time, maybe what we'll do is we'll close out, and then we will load up a new stream, basically, if we can.
Okay. Okay.
Wait, let me see if I could even
okay.
close. It's not even like letting me close out. It's so weird.
Should I just hit the leave button, or can you stop? Or you can't stop the live button. Don't stop believing.
Yeah, I think the only thing I could do is just maybe turn off my computer. So I might try to do that and see if it takes us out. If it does, then for folks who are watching us live, because I know there are people right now, just hang tight. We'll be coming up again with a new stream soon.
We do apologize for the technical inconvenience. Yes. This. But when we get in the studio, we won't have these problems, I assure you, because everybody will be fired. Right, Bonnie? Hello, Bonnie. All right, everyone. Well, we are, like I said, having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to close out. Be sure to sign back in, and we'll be back in a minute. We were discussing on Trans Day visibility, the acronyms and definitions of the LGBTQQ. I want to make sure I get this right. Yeah, that's a lot. Okay, we'll explain it when we come back. All right, bye-bye.
Hey folks, how's it going? Thanks for hanging with us. I had to like completely shut down my computer, and then I'm working on getting Daphne back here, but I just wanted to give folks a heads up real quick. Hey girl, just go back to that same link. The stream hasn't shut down yet.
I think it's still going on.
Yeah, so yeah, I just looked. Yeah, it's still up. So if you want to just pop right back into it.
Okay.
All right, bye. Sorry about that, everyone. All our lights went out too. I'm gonna go off screen for a second, but I'll be right back.
And we're back from outer space. I just walked in to find that look upon your face.
Right? That's wild. It's like everything just froze up.
That's God's trying to tell you something.
What? Just shut up?
Right. You know what the hell you're talking about.
It's like, stop talking about this stuff. You're
right.
trying to
Damn
indoctrinate the world.
So we have a eclectic fandom with us. Is that a big old heart from them?
Yep, it is a big old black heart.
Well, I am so glad you are joining the conversation, eclectic.
Indeed.
All right, so Bonnie, you ready?
Sure. How many more of these do we have?
We're only on, we don't have a lot.
Okay, well, let's go.
Okay, next. We'll do it fast. Okay.
Next.
We were on gender identity, which you explained, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have gender queer.
Yeah.
This one I didn't know.
Yeah, so gender queer is just like one of my identifiers is gender queer. And that's just basically the idea that you don't express yourself in the normative idea of the gender that you identify with, like somebody who's like, it's almost like androgyny, really, in a lot of ways. It's just a more technical term for it.
Okay. Loyola says a gender identity that rejects the notion that all genders can be described on the masculine, feminine binary.
Perfect.
And heterosexism.
Heterosexism would be... It's heterosexism?
Yeah.
So heterosexism, I would think, and taking a stab at it, because to me, usually an ism is thought to be as like more of like an ailment or like a bias, maybe even. And so that's what I would think is maybe somebody who has a bias toward people who are heterosexual, and probably a more negative bias.
Okay. Loyola says that heterosexism are norms and behaviors that result from the assumption that all people are or should be heterosexual.
Okay.
This system of oppression assumes that heterosexuality is inherently normal and superior, and negates LGBTQ people's lives and relationships.
Great. Yeah, I did not say that. So
okay. Well, we
got the assumption. Yeah. The assumption that everybody is heterosexual.
Yes, and that heterosexuality trumps LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's heterosexual, and that is a medical definition for a person who is emotionally, romantically, or sexually attracted to members of the opposite biological sex, often called a straight person.
Right.
Okay. So so I just wanted to bring out some of these because then there's homophobia, homosexual, intersex, lesbian, pansexual. Um, then there is queer, questioning, sexual identity, transgender, transphobia, transitioning, trans man, trans woman, and two spirit. Which out of all of these, I have to say that that is one of my identities. Is I identify as two spirited, which means contemporary term chosen by Native American indigenous people who identify with a third gender, implying a masculine and feminine spirit in one body.
Then, so are you indigenous?
Yes, I'm indigenous to Chicago.
No, I mean like
Yeah, we supposedly have some Native American in our DNA. I did my mother does, believe it or not, but I just don't seem to have it in mine. But she does identify in her chart. I would have thought that I had some, but
yeah, and two spirit is almost like, it's not quite the same as like gender, but for non native folks, it kind of, I don't know, I don't think I could speak well to it, but in the sense that transgender is kind of an umbrella term, two spirit in the same way is more of an umbrella term for the idea that there's more than just male and female identities and representations. So in different tribes and different groups of people, they might have different names for these individuals, but it's kind of commonly known and seen in the community or the group that there are people like this. There's kind of like a third gender, or again, that's kind of like putting white people's language on native language that doesn't quite translate the same way. So yeah, that's my limited understanding.
well, thank you, Bonnie, for helping me get some of these terms out tonight.
Yeah.
I know you probably wanted to discuss some other things this evening,
Well,
friends.
why don't we could just focus on terminology and stuff, and next week we could focus more on trans visibility and stuff, and we could just go through the rest of the list. We're already at like 45 minutes, so we only have 15 minutes more.
Okay. Well, we already done cut through the list. If there's anybody out there, are there any questions that you may have that you want to bring up in the chat? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing I would bring up is just so like pansexual is how I identify. So it's one of my identifiers, I guess, because I identify as trans, femme, gender queer. That's my gender, but my sexuality is pansexual, in the idea that I am open to being romantically, sexually, and all the ways attracted to any gender, whether it's another trans person, whether it's a cisgendered male or female, or it's somebody who identifies as non-binary or genderqueer. It doesn't matter about I think there's omnisexual as well, that are kind of one in the same, except for like one is more gender based, but it's basically the idea that those sorts of identifiers don't necessarily determine whether or not you have a relationship or you're attracted to someone.
Okay, and you know what's so funny? Loyola does not have either of those in our
pansexual. Didn't you?
Oh yes, I do. I'm sorry. Pansexual, a person who experiences sexual, romantic, physical, or spiritual attraction to others, regardless of gender, identities, expressions, or biological property.
Do you know, one thing I would ask, is transgenderism on there? Because I know that's a term that's come up in the past, but my understanding, transgenderism is more of like a it's a word that non-trans people use against us to talk about the idea that transness is like an ailment or a sickness. It's not. So it's kind of like, oftentimes it's from religious people or people who are not supportive of trans people. They'll use the term
kind of like the heterosexism. That would be transsexual.
They would use transgenderism. Yeah. And so that's typically not a term that trans people use. However, again, language is, we all have different understandings of different language. And so typically that wouldn't be used anymore, I guess. It's kind of like if you hear of same-sex attraction, or same-sex attraction. Same-sex attraction is usually language that religious groups have put on the idea of a man who is attracted to men or women who is attracted to women, and that is wrong, and that it's something to fight up against. So again, that's kind of tends to be, again, and some of the words have been used by certain groups of people, which then causes that word to be kind of triggering or traumatic or difficult for people to hear. So usually you won't hear same-sex attraction unless there's some sort of history with some sort of religion connotation. Now, oftentimes you'll hear, especially in Black communities, you'll hear the term same gender loving, and gay men and gay women will often refer to themselves as being same gender loving. Which is also like another term that, and again, different groups of people, different, there's a lot of intersections of our own identities. We have different, there's different races, there's different, there's just so many different things, and words can be different.
What is the word trade?
So trade is typically the idea of a man who is manly, machismo, or kind of like just kind of a rough man that a trans or queer person could get with or finds attractive, or that sort of thing. So it's kind of like, I guess, is that how you would explain it?
I would say trade is a man that identifies, who appears, because I wouldn't say his sexual preference would be predominantly heterosexual for trade. That would be the assumption.
Somebody could see a trans man as trade as well. So it is really just kind of like this hyper masculine, kind of rough, hot, like sexy kind of, that's how somebody will say, like on RuPaul's Drag Race, they refer to the trade of the season. So who's the one that people would want to have sex with the most, or something like that, as a guy.
So who's your celebrity trade, Bonnie?
That's not a term I use. Yeah, I do. I mean, oftentimes trade is
celebrity trade.
Trade is often, I think, a term used within like the Black community. I think with trans women. But I think it's definitely not usually something white girls say, unless they're like in community with other folks, and it's like common language, but it's not typically a word that I would use to identify.
Okay, because I've known a lot of other girls in the community. It doesn't matter what race. It's just a word that we use in our community.
Yeah, and I would use it if I was, say, in conversation with you. Like I would say, "Oh, that guy is trade." No, because that's a language. Well, yes, I guess.
Okay.
But just in the sense that it's language that you use and understand. And so in order to try to communicate with you, I would potentially use your words to just kind of, again, connect with you and get that we understand each other. Because I could also say, "Oh, look at that trade over there." And you're like, "Girl, that is not trade."
Not at all.
And so I think it's a way of also saying, no, I understand what you mean when you say trade.
And I'll be looking like, where?
Yes. And, a lot of the language comes from like ball culture and, from, that, all that sort of stuff. And so I think there's a mindfulness, I think, especially like as a white person, I think it's important for me to be mindful of the words that I use and how I use them. Without like, you're going to automatically kind of pick up things sometimes.
Yeah.
It really ain't cute to like put on a black scent or to like.
You mean there's ethics in how we communicate as sisters?
I think that there's a difference between how you are with friends, because with friends, sometimes you can take the piss out of one another, right? You can say things that you wouldn't normally say in the general public, or if we were on a podcast, or you know what I mean? Like, because taken out of context. And if somebody outside of our community talked to us like that, it would be like unacceptable.
Yes.
Kind of like in some ways, I think it's like when some Black folks might use the N-word, or some gay people might like the word faggot or queer.
Or heterosexual people like the word cis woman.
They don't like that, right? And so, so part of that is, I think, is being able to be aware of that. So it's like, because if a straight person called me a faggot who I didn't know, I would have a problem. Like, that would not be okay.
Right.
But if we're within our own community, sometimes we'll use those words to kind of take away the power that it has in other mouths.
Yeah. So some words or connotations that it's just not polite to use.
Aaron P says, excellent points and great discussion about communication. Sorry, I'm so used to you just reading the comments.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
And Carrie's here.
Hi, Carrie girl.
Hey, Carrie. And thanks for folks, if you stuck through us with the tech problems. Like, girl, I guess that's what we get when we're just two trans people in our living rooms trying to.
My mansion. You swear this is the this is
I'm sorry, in your mansion, my apartment.
This is my sheet.
Exactly. So so folks who are here, if you have questions about LGBTQIA plus terminology or about the community, now would be a great time to bring that up. We did talk about a lot of the terms. So if you are just popping in, you could listen back, but also we have no problem with answering the question here for those that are live or even coming across this at a later date. I'm trying to think what other things. Oh, so the other term, I think, and you use this word a lot, is transsexual. And so transsexual, and you identify as transsexual, was that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
trans slim.
Trans slim, all right. Because and transsexual is one of those words that like historically was a way to identify as transgender. So I think people of your generation and maybe
my
even
generation, we call ourselves queens.
Well, right. But I mean, but when you refer to your transness, it's transsexual. And so the thing that a lot of people, why transsexual changed to transgender, is because transness is about your gender, not your sexuality directly. And so, and a lot of the times people, have this negative idea about trans people and sex work and those sorts of things that we end up having to do because to survive. And so some people have chosen to just use transgender as a way to get away from that idea of sex. But there are also a lot of people that say, no, I'm a transsexual because I own all of this. You know what I mean?
And then I didn't see the word transvestite in here, which some people find that offensive and prefer to be called trans.
Well, a transvestite is different than like usually a transvestite is somebody who dresses in the opposite gender, often opposite gender, for sexual purposes. And so it's not necessarily like, they're living as this person on a regular basis, which would make you transgender, versus a transvestite. It's definitely tends to be, in my understanding, is that it's more around sex and sexual behavior versus gender.
Okay, because I have no notes on that in Loyola, so I'm flying.
Yeah, I mean, because if you think of the what is that movie, The Sweet Transvestite?
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah, is that what it is? Yeah, and so that is kind of the idea of a transsexual, right? That's not a transgender person. That's at least not in the way.
I never knew. For me, I never knew from gay men that identify as gay but still dress as women. They're called drag queens and not transvestites. Can we break that down a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, drag is typically an art form. Like it's you're dressing oftentimes in the opposite gender. Sometimes it's the same gender but exaggerated, and it's usually for the purpose of performance. So usually it's like stage, or it might even be just going out to a party and being with friends. But it's an idea of doing it. It's an art. It's an expression. It's not the way you live all the time.
Right, because I know straight men that enjoy doing drag because this is purely for art. So it's not a sexual connotation.
If they're, but
Drag,
they're
either gay or straight, you would consider it's just an art form.
right. And
Thank
then
you for
there's,
clarifying that, Bonnie.
yeah, and it's really, I think, the idea of the intentional art form aspect, because there also is cross-dressing, which is just somebody who might like to wear the opposite gender clothes around the house, or or maybe even for sex.
But would you consider them trans then?
I wouldn't consider, I don't like putting a label on anyone.
Okay.
But typically somebody who is a cross-dresser would not be transgender, or identify as transgender. However, if you're looking at transgender as a more umbrella term, it could definitely fall under that sort of not, I don't want to use the word
Not
normative,
acceptable words to use.
because it's, I mean, because none of this is normal. Yeah, I mean, all, no, in the sense of like, it's all normal. So that's why I don't want to like say normative, but
Yeah.
just in, the colonizer language.
Mhm.
Anyway. Yeah, so I mean, I like that we got to talking a little bit more about like transness and gender stuff, because I think oftentimes, the LGBTQIA2S plus community is lumped together, and we're lumped together in part because we're all minority groups of people who often to other people see us as the same, right? They see us
Yeah.
as the same thing. However, there is differences in all of this. Like, there are sometimes feminine gay guys that people who don't know us might call them a trans person or something. You know what I mean? But I think it's important, especially when we're talking about, like last week, we talked about the political stuff.
Mhm.
Like, people are specifically coming after trans people for things, not gay people. You know what I mean? And there is a difference because it's around gender and that sort of thing. There is a question here with Aaron P. wanted me to talk about gender nonconformity. And
Okay.
gender nonconformity, again, is kind of like gender queer.
Yes.
They're kind of the same thing. Gender nonconformity is just that your gender is not conforming to the status quo of what a man or a woman should, their gender expression is thought to be. And so it's being, again, non-conforming. You're not conforming to the status quo of how it's thought to be or taught to be. And sometimes people, like, I don't like to use the word non-binary or non-gender conforming as an identifier. I think it's a way to label how I might live my life, but it seems weird to identify as a non-something, like I'm non-black.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, you know what I mean? That might be.
So let me bring you to another one. Now, this day and age now, even for myself and my work, a lot of people and a lot of companies are now changing a lot of things and asking people for their pronouns. What is it when you say, what are your pronouns? Is that the proper way to always greet someone nowadays? Or is that, we have to have some companies have name badges. She, or she, her, hers. A lot of that is going on in the world. And why do you think that is happening now?
Well, I think part of it is people are trying to be a little bit more mindful and trying to recognize people more. And so basically it's the idea of not assuming how somebody identifies because of the way that they might look or the way that you're seeing them as. And so asking is typically, and especially if you're an ally and you are wanting, like the first word of our conversation, usually I think a better way might be to share your pronouns when you meet somebody new, because otherwise the person might feel clocked if, again, the term we used before, where that person might feel clocked if you're asking them their pronouns, because then you're like, oh, I don't know what their gender is, right?
Yes.
And so that can make somebody feel not supported. And so if you say, oh, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I use she pronouns, what's your name? And then usually they'll say their name and they'll share their pronouns because you shared yours. And so that's, I think, a more ideal way to do it. And so oftentimes in business places, we just put it in our signatures, or we, it's in our next to our name when we're in a Zoom meeting, or those sorts of things. Again, it's a way to help people not assume how we identify by the way we look, I guess.
And I just want to comment. Thank you, Carrie. We
And we all
love
have,
educating people.
yes.
The goal for us is to make sure that we all live comfortably and we walk through this earth respectfully, and give each other respect. So all it takes is just these uncomfortable but comfortable conversations between, like, Bonnie and I. So thank you. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, and we'll put in the I'll get the link to
Sure.
the information that you have, and
Yes.
I'll put it in the description of the podcast episode on Spotify or YouTube or wherever, so that you can kind of check it out. And again, I think the thing that's most important is to just not assume, not just really assume anything.
Right.
And when it's appropriate, when you have a relationship with someone that you're close enough, you might ask them questions about how they identify. Or you said you were gay. What does that mean to you?
Yes.
Or you said you were transgender. Could you tell me more about that? How I wouldn't suggest saying that to a stranger or somebody that you just met or somebody at work. Again, I think that's something that would happen when you have a connection with somebody, or you're trying to build a relationship with someone.
Right. So the term that we first started about was the LGBTQ terms and definitions. And what originally brought me to this was that the LGBTQ has now changed to and not that it's legally changed this way, but it is now being seen as LGBTQQIP2SA.
Yeah, in some places, and some you'll just see like LGBTQIA plus, which is Levitical, which just means like, so some people might shorten it that way, but yeah, to try to be more inclusive, you would use all of those letters. But just a little bit of history, the L didn't always come first.
No,
it used to be G for gay. It used to be gays and lesbians, but way back when they put the L first in order to really focus on the lesbian community, because it had been so male more about the gay man. Yeah. And so but it started with the L for a long time. But and I think it's important to understand, there are some LGs who don't think T's that don't think trans people should be a part of the community. And yeah. I can understand that, because, and sometimes I think it is important for people to understand the distinction, that there is a difference. However, I think there is value in us being a community as a whole, as a broader community.
Yes. There were times where I can personally remember where trans people like myself weren't welcome in gay bars. We were considered uncouth or dirty or just sexual workers, and things like that. So we were really frowned upon. And, I just want to say how proud I am that we are being recognized today. And that brings me also, and we can probably talk a little bit more about this on the actual live that we do for Trans Day Visibility, about all of the violence that's going on out there against our kind, and that needs to stop.
There was another girl killed. I just saw another girl, Diamond.
Yes. Say their names.
I know, right? It's and I think that's something that it's interesting, because oftentimes that's just a common thing that happens in our community always. And Trans Day of Remembrance is often a time that is more about like the mourning and the remembering. And Trans Day of Visibility typically is more about celebration and joy and taking up space and claiming that like we are here, and just being visible, and the importance of visibility and how it matters. And so I'd love for us to talk a little bit more about that like next week. Sure. Definitely like the importance of visibility and why do we have this day and those sorts of things. And for folks who are here, you know, this is not like to watch this video doesn't like automatically like, you know, educate you, especially if you just go with what I said, because I know it's you know, it's confusing. And I often don't like just talking about these terms, because again, they're so nuanced and dependent on an individual's understanding. So I would encourage you again to like check out the links in the description. You know, there's lots of great information online. I think if you are, you know, there's also lots of really bad information online as well.
Yes.
So really check your sources, and, you know, there's great movies and books to read, and just, you know, try to find stuff that are made by trans people, or, you know, for, you know, so that you can actually hear from the, I don't want to say horse's mouth, but so that you, so that it's from our gaze instead of somebody else talking about us. It's like me writing your book, me writing your life story versus me telling, you know what I mean? You telling your life story. So Pose is a really great show that folks can watch. I think it really, especially around the intersections of Blackness and queerness, and then it goes through the generations of the 80s and the 90s, and there is the moments where queens are getting, you know, kicked out of bars, you know.
Yeah, it's a very touching, but it really shows you about how the community was in New York around that era. So thank you. We do, Aaron. I agree with you. We all need to stick together. That was very kind of you to say. And it's not just us, it's we all need to stick together, you know. Mm-hmm. And once we do that, we're unstoppable. And I'm talking about us as a whole species. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what I mean. If these two cicadas can come together after 200 or how many years they haven't been together.
Calling a cicada
here, huh? I'm just giving an example of how a species can come together after 200 and something years and get together and mate and just make love. I mean, and make the best vibration that there is. Imagine how we are.
We can't go an episode without bringing up trees.
Yes. I heard they're picking up a storm.
Right.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. We're also like, and you know, like for folks, we are doing reaction videos now too. There is a video that there's a song that Dylan Mulvaney made, which I think might be a really great thing for us maybe to do a reaction and an episode next week. I don't know, it might be something because I think it might be
You mean we're gonna take off our Ren hats and give another type of reaction?
Yeah, I think it might be a way to merge what we do. But I think it'll also spark us into the conversation about visibility and how we're visible and all that sort of stuff. So I'm thinking it might be a good way to do that. Carrie says, good example. So she's supportive of your sequoias, even though I'm like, you lost me.
Carrie, I just love you, Carrie. I do.
I love that Carrie found us too, for sure. Gosh, what a roller coaster we went through with all the tech stuff, but we did it.
We always do it, Bonnie, because that's who we are.
Yes. Well, I will cut out the, you know, do some edits.
You gonna cut out my solo?
Oh. Well, if it wasn't any good. No, but more so for, I mean, when it comes to, because I have to upload the audio for the podcast and stuff too. Yeah. So anyway, we're going in the weeds talking about crap that people probably don't care about. What's that?
Did you have my cicada comment?
No, me talking about like uploading and whatever. So we're going to do a Trans Day of Visibility part 2 next week, and we'll really focus on the importance of visibility versus terminology and stuff.
Thank you, Carrie.
No, you did that, I think, with your. Remember?
I can do it again.
That was oh my gosh!
Carrie, I thought you did that. I did that.
Girl, I can't. You
can't do it.
No, I love that. It was so great. Resilient buggers. Yeah, we are. You cannot keep us down.
So, Bonnie, I unfortunately have to close out.
Oh, yeah, me too. I'm done with you.
We want to say thank you to Carrie and Aaron.
And the other folks who are in that aren't Eclectic Fandom.
Eclectic Fandom. Thank you all for joining us.
Eclectic.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to what, Bonnie?
Get your merch. All right. Well, let's call it a night. Oh wait, there's another comment. Aaron says thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
Good night.